I had some idea of the power of gratitude, but really not much of an idea until I began to explore the research literature on this. So I'm going to give you a brief, kind of a brief survey of some of the research that's been done, just to give you a bit of a gist of what kinds of things psychologists have been exploring lately. So let me explore with you a few of those studies that I mentioned. One is kind of a classic study now. It appeared in the psych journals about 6 years ago. It's on gratitude journaling, and this was done by researchers at the University of California at Davis. And basically the idea here was that students in psychology classes at UC Davis were asked to keep a journal in which they rated their moods, their physical health, their overall judgments of happiness. And they were asked to put these judgments on a scale from -3 to +3. -3 would be things are going terrible, to +3, I'm just delighted with how things are. They were also asked to give their expectations for the following week, and again on a scale of -3 to +3, from being very pessimistic, -3, to being very optimistic, +3. The study went on for 10 weeks. After the 10 weeks, the results indicated that the gratitude group felt much happier about their lives. In fact, they were 25% happier than the other participants. They had fewer health complaints. They even spent more time exercising. Another study, separate study, had students write letters of gratitude. So not just journaling, but actually to write a letter. And this was done at Kent State University, and students were assigned to one of two groups. One was a gratitude letter group, and the other was a control group. Random assignment once again. And the three classes in the gratitude letter group would write letters over an 8-week period of time, and they were asked to write letters that would really express their appreciation. The feeling of gratitude is only one part of the emotion. When we have an emotion, that emotion affects us subjectively, our conscious experience, but it also is likely to be expressed in particular behaviors. So in this study, the students were asked to actually write a letter, which is one form of expressing how they felt, not just feeling it, but expressing how they felt in a letter, and it turned out that the letter writers had significant increases in happiness and well-being. Here's another study that was done at the University of Pennsylvania by Martin Seligman and his group. This is a really interesting study. It involved a gratitude visit. And here the idea is also with expressing gratitude, but expressing it directly to somebody to whom you feel grateful. There were two groups, and the first group was a gratitude visit group, and participants in this study had to write and deliver a letter to someone who had been especially kind to them or who had made an enormous positive difference, somebody who is still alive, but you've never properly thanked this person. And what you were to do was, first of all, write a letter of about 300 words in which you really take your time to write the letter clearly and specifically, telling the story to this person of what a difference this person has made in your life, being very concrete about details. And then, after you write the letter, you'd call the person up and say, I want to come visit you. Now, the control group, also randomly assigned, did not make the gratitude visit. What they found was that the participants in the gratitude visit group were happier, had in fact a big boost in happiness, and were less depressed. And the glow of this gratitude visit actually lasted for over a month. And of course, it not only affected the person who was making the visit, but also, of course, the recipient of that visit. And basically, what Seligman reported is that people were very moved by this testimony. And in fact, there were tears all around. Everybody found it to be a very profound and moving experience. Now, a gratitude visit is not always practical for obvious reasons, but you can see the impact of expressing one's gratitude. Gertrude Stein used to say that if you're silent about gratitude, what good does that do anyone? So you really need to express it, not just feel it subjectively. Here's another study, the role of gratitude in medical training. This one back on the West Coast, University of Washington Medical Center, looked at medical trainees in a hospital setting. And they looked at day-to-day emotions and the experiences that triggered them in medical trainees. And they used interviews and observations for this study, and they found that positive emotions, such as gratitude in these physicians, were triggered by the joy of learning, the opportunity to practice medicine, emotional support from mentors, and recognition from patients, basically telling your doctor, thank you for helping me. And it turns out that grateful docs are better docs, that gratitude actually improves medical decision-making by physicians. They turn out to be more effective problem solvers and clinical decision makers. And that was an interesting benefit, that grateful doctors are better doctors. Here's another study that also deals with medical situations. These were individuals who have neuromuscular diseases, and this was done by the UC Davis researchers that I mentioned earlier with gratitude journaling. Here the participants were adults, and these adults were adults with neuromuscular disorders. They had primarily post-polio disease. And this is a disease that can strike polio survivors 10 to 40 years after recovery from the polio virus. And the symptoms of post-polio disease include fatigue, muscle weakness, muscle and joint pain, muscular atrophy. And the symptoms might be severe to mild. All the people had these neuromuscular diseases. They were randomly assigned to one of two groups. One was a gratitude condition, in which they were to jot down their blessings daily, and the other was a control condition, just would fill out questionnaires and rating forms, but not talk about their blessings. And it turns out that the gratitude group had significantly more positive affect, less negative affect, greater satisfaction with life, more optimism about the upcoming week, and more satisfaction with their lives as a whole. And there's more. The gratitude patients felt more connected to other people. They even got more sleep, felt more refreshed when waking up from sleep, and generally throughout their day were more alert and energetic. Here's another study, University of Pittsburgh. These were heart transplant patients. Now you might think that receiving a heart is certainly a gift, and of course it is. These were 119 heart transplant patients, and they were scored for their feelings of thankfulness and appreciation for getting a heart, and people can be scored on that. We have ways of measuring how thankful you are, and it turns out that thankfulness and appreciation had a positive correlation with perceived physical and mental health at 1 year post-transplant. That those who were most appreciative and thankful did better medically and psychologically. And the thankfulness predicted greater compliance with medical regimens and fewer problems with diet and medications. And given that Valentine's Day is approaching, one more, and that's gratitude as a booster for romantic relationships. Here's a study that was done at the University of North Carolina with 66 couples in ongoing and committed relationships. And what the researchers did was to track the day-to-day fluctuations in relationship satisfaction, and they found that the everyday ups and downs were very much a consequence of feeling a gratitude or having that gratitude expressed. So the more grateful you are to your partner, and the more you're able to express that gratitude, the higher the relationship satisfaction appeared. So that's about where I am right now in my progress report with regard to what I've been learning. One more, and that's the Buddha. Let us rise up and be thankful, for if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we didn't get sick, or if we did get sick, at least we didn't die. So we can all be thankful for that. Thank you. So what I've been thinking about lately is a field of psychology called positive psychology. It's one of the newer areas in psychology, and I know very little about it. So I'm going to basically give you a bit of a progress report as to what I've been learning lately. I had some idea of the power of gratitude, but really not much of an idea until I began to explore the research literature on this. Now, I'm one who kind of favors the biological side to psychology, the more rigorous scientific side to psychology, and so I always had the impression that gratitude research was more like pop psychology, that was more sentimental and kind of hokey, Norman Rockwell, Hallmark greeting cards, things like that, and I'm learning just how wrong I am. An earlier point, it's not easy to feel grateful or to express gratitude or to develop this gratitude-centered approach to life. These are really almost like skills. And like any skill, playing the piano, for example, you have to practice. And so the question is, how do we get people to practice these feelings of gratitude? And here are some evidence-based prescriptions for becoming more grateful. One is to keep a gratitude journal. The research on journaling is very clear now that the more often you count your blessings and write it down, the more likely you're going to be developing that sense of gratitude for those gifts that are in your life. A second point, not quite as obvious, is to remember the bad. And the idea here is that it's very helpful to contrast your current situation with how things might have been, what psychologists call counterfactuals. It's kind of like thinking about if, there but for the grace of God go I. You're thinking about how bad things could be, and yet where you are now. That tendency to engage in contrast and counterfactuals helps us to appreciate things that otherwise we might take for granted, so that we appreciate the warmer weather and the sunshine, especially after its contrast with gloomy winter cold days. Or we appreciate a fine meal after a period of long abstinence from eating. Or we appreciate close, intimate relationships with people after a period of being away from such activities. So contrast seems to be very important. Another exercise is to ask oneself 3 questions, and to do this on a regular basis, asking, what have I received from these people? What have I given to these people? And what troubles or difficulty might I have caused other people? Another one is to learn prayers of gratitude. One that might appeal to those of us who don't have a faith tradition would be from Thich Nhat Hanh. Waking up this morning, I see the blue sky. I join my hands in thanks for the many wonders of life, for having 24 brand new hours before me. Another one is the exercise of coming to your senses, looking at the physicality of gratitude, of gratefulness, just paying attention to what you're able to see or hear or smell or taste or touch, and being grateful for those senses. And even if those senses are beginning to not function quite as well as they have in the past, you can still breathe. And with every breath, you're saying thank you. Obviously, you don't do that all the time because breathing is something that we don't normally attend to, but as an exercise, 5 breaths saying thank you with each outward breath it can be very useful as an exercise. Another is to use visual reminders, basically having hints about being grateful surrounding us. A lot of people will have wall plaques or refrigerator magnets or paperweights or post-it notes. You might even be able to program your smartphone to give you random calls throughout the day saying, give thanks, whatever. All of those kinds of things can be useful because one of the things that is a barrier to feeling grateful is forgetting. forgetting, not being fully mindful. And so these reminders are hints that this is something that we don't want to take for granted. Of course, there are cultural reminders as well. We have Mother's Day and Father's Day and Veterans Day and Memorial Day and, of course, Thanksgiving Day. So there are cultural things built into our community that helps us remember. But we do need to have these reminders. And another thing, of course, is other people. Just being around other people can be a powerful reminder. When we are around people who are grateful, we tend to feel more grateful. If we are around people who are negative and complaining, we'll tend to adopt that mindset as well. It's what psychologists refer to as emotional contagion. We tend to pick up on the emotions of the people around us. Or there is research on what they call mirror neurons, suggesting that we tend to have our brain organized in such a way that if somebody is feeling a certain way, we'll tend to pick up on that feeling. So hanging around grateful people is a good way to enhance your gratitude. Another is to make a commitment, a pledge to practice gratitude. And the idea is that the public affirmation of, I'm not going to take things for granted, can be very useful. Even posting that pledge, reminding yourself and others can be useful. Another is to pay attention to the language you use, to thinking about these things that we might think of as, we might take for granted, to think of them as gifts, because when something is present in our life as a gift, we tend to take better care of it than if it's something that we take for granted. This actually comes from a lot of research dealing with the relationship between language and cognition, that how we talk to ourselves can influence how we see the world. So if we think about things in terms of gifts or as blessings, we're likely to think about those things differently and behave toward them differently than if we just take them for granted or feel entitled to them. And as Ralph Waldo Emerson reminded us, we are what we think about all day long. Two more? One more? I'll give you two. Okay, here's one. Go through the motions. And here, the idea of this is that sometimes there's a lot of research on this to suggest that we will tend to feel the way we act. So if you acted enthusiastic about something, you'll tend to feel that way. If you acted happy, you'll tend to feel happy. There's a ton of research on this now. And the idea is that if you want to feel grateful, you express gratitude even if you weren't originally feeling it. Act grateful, and the feeling will come. Go through the motions, and the feeling will come. There's a great deal of research now to suggest that attitudes often follow actions. And so even if you weren't feeling particularly grateful about something, act as if you were, and the feeling will come. Here's one more, and that is to be more creative about the opportunities to be grateful, to think outside the box. And here what we want to do is attend to new situations, new circumstances that would be opportunities for us to feel grateful. One example of this is to be grateful to people who do us harm, to be grateful to our enemies. This, of course, is a very common ideal within Buddhism. The Dalai Lama, for example, says that he is grateful to the Chinese because it gives him the opportunity to practice love for his enemies. Now, love might be a little much for most of us to ask. This is a very advanced form of gratitude, to love your enemy. But at least we can be patient. We can be thankful to those who do us harm as a way that they are teaching us some positive attribute, even if it's only patience. Another example of thinking outside the box is to be grateful to someone whom you benefit. The opportunity to be of service to others is also an opportunity to feel grateful that we have that opportunity. And that's a very powerful expression of gratitude and a very positive reinforcer for gratitude behaviors. Mother Teresa, for example, often reported that she was grateful to the sick and dying that she ministered to in Calcutta because they enabled her to deepen her compassion. So that's about where I am right now in my progress report with regard to what I've been learning. One more, and that's the Buddha. Let us rise up and be thankful, for if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we didn't get sick, or if we did get sick, at least we didn't die. So we can all be thankful for that. Thank you.